You learn it all.
And people are
Good question. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Gathering Place. And I am so excited about today's topic. It is the Ancestors Fingermark Project. And I have two wonderful guests who are joining me today to talk about this project and what it entails and what they are looking forward to towards the future. And I first want to welcome Mr. Paul Garbarini. Paul, how are you?
Oh, it's good to
Haven't
see
seen you in a while. Like in 30 seconds. Yeah. Thank you, Paul, for joining me. I look forward to learning more about the Ancestors Fingermark Project. All right. And next we have your partner. Is that right? Partner, Miss Natalie Daise. Hi, Natalie. How are you today?
Hello. I'm excellent. Good to see you guys.
It's good to see you, Natalie. Thank you for joining us. Paul, thank you for joining us. Also, Natalie, I think I saw you in person last. You did a play that was written by your son and directed, I believe.
Written and directed and stage managed. All of that.
Everything. In other words, everything. And it was beautiful. And I want to say thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it and appreciate and everything. And thank you for coming on today. And Paul, I saw you at the same play. And good to see you again in person. It's been a while. COVID has kept us away from each other, but it's all good. Mm-hmm. So recently you guys were at the Galageechee Junkanoo. Am I saying that correctly? At Brick Geek Gardens to talk about your project. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't make it out that day, but I will make it out next year because that is a wonderful event. I think it's the second year that was hosted by Brick Geek. The third year? Okay, there you go. The third year. So it's growing and getting better every year. So that is exciting to know. And I encourage everyone to check that out for the next Junkanoo at Brick Geek Gardens. But we are here today to talk about the Ancestors Fingermarks Project and what is that? What does it entail? And Natalie, if you could share with us, because I think it is such a profound project. When Paul first told me about it, that this is just a wonderful project. Can you tell us more about it and why it's so important?
Yes, we know that a lot of this country was built by the hands of enslaved West Africans. And particularly here in the Gullah-Geechee Cultural Corridor, folk from the rice coast of West Africa were those who were actually building the infrastructure that we still see today. And while we know this, we don't know their names, we don't know their faces, we don't know who they were, and yet they have left marks for us. They've left clues. And one of the things that we have discovered, and Paul is just a brick guy, one of the things we've discovered is that in the handmade bricks made by these West African enslaved workers, many of them have left their finger marks in these bricks. And they persist to this day. And so you can go, and when you find these bricks, as you can see in that beautiful one, you can put your fingers in the marks left by most likely the West African enslaved children who made and turned those bricks. And it is a way to actually touch history. It's a way to acknowledge the existence of those who came before us. And what Paul and I want to do with the Ancestors Fingermarks Project is to bring more attention to these markings and to honor those who left them.
Very good. And that's one of the reasons, for me, I'm a very visual person. So to hear about leaving your marks and that we are walking around every day and our ancestors have left their marks in the brick, it's a very moving experience for me personally. I can imagine for you and Paul that this is something that's just very, and I'm assuming maybe very emotional. Paul, can you speak to that emotion, but what drove you to this? Because you are the brick guy. You're the brick guy.
I'm a brick geek. Yeah. I like so many things in my life. I kind of fell into it, dropped in my lap, and I am terminally curious. So when I'm holding a brick that is from 1774, documented, we have the documentation. We have the documentation of where that brick was made, Park West in Mount Pleasant. We have the documentation of who owned the people who made the bricks. That connection was profound. And then the finger marks. Now, I wasn't the one who discovered the finger marks. The first time I saw them, they were in the brick privy at Drayton Hall. Beautiful set of finger marks in the bricks there. And those are, I don't remember the date. Nevertheless, I had to find out how bricks were made then and how possibly these people could have left their fingerprints, finger marks in the bricks. So that's what I set out to learn. That one just, I love
It's very
that one.
clear. This one is just, yeah, it's so clear. Yeah.
Look how small they are. They're so small. In order to hand make bricks, you want to hear the whole thing? This takes a minute.
Yes, that's why we're here.
Tell the story how bricks were made. In the wintertime, enslaved workers would harvest clay from the riverbank, typically, if not, digging clay pits, because clay's not very deep here in the Low Country. And they would spread it out over a field. I'm going to stop gesturing now. It would spread it out over a field for a winter. That would let cycles of cool and cooler and cold and rain and no rain kind of weather the clay, kind of let the salts rinse through. But while they're doing that, there's children who are walking back and forth across the field to crumble the clay. They might be leading an ox to keep it crumbled up so it's not just solid clay in the springtime. In the spring, when it's time to make bricks, somebody's bringing all that clay to the molder, the brick mold guy, and he's mixing it with sand and clay and water and slapping it in a mold. And then it's turned out. And then those bricks, still damp from the water, are stacked, spread out so they can dry evenly. You can't put a damp brick in the kiln because the resulting steam would blow up everything. So they have to dry completely. That's when the children come back. They turn the bricks every now and then to make sure they dry evenly. And a child pushing a brick or picking up a brick that weighs 5 pounds, 8 pounds, sometimes they leave their finger marks in the bricks. Then it's cooked in. You put it in the kiln and it's burned in, it's permanent. That's what we're finding. Those unknown ancestors left their finger marks in those bricks, and they are everywhere. Everywhere.
Okay, just this, what you told me, I've learned a lot. So I'm going to go back to the building, because the beginning of what you said, because I have specific questions, because that's how I work. Once I hear stuff. When they spread the clay out in the field, I imagine that must have been very thick. You can't spread it out thinly because with the weatherization of it and beating down. So how thick was it?
Yeah, some inches.
Okay. All right. And then you said it was mixed with sand, clay, and water to make the brick shape.
That's the ingredients that go slap in the mold.
Okay. All right. And once it's in the mold, you have to dry it. So so it dries evenly. The children are flipping it. It comes out of the mold.
Out of the mold.
Okay.
Take it out and then it has to dry.
Okay. And in that process, you have children. Is it mostly children, or is it children and adults also?
They're spread out on the ground by and large, not every time, but most of the time they're spread out on the ground. And frankly, children, it's unskilled work, right? Just to turn a brick. And they're closer to the ground.
Oh, okay. Okay. I got you. So, okay. Now, this also speaks to the fact that we're known as a rice growing area, but the enslaved economy, if you will, it's not just rice, it's brick making, it's building, etc. Natalie, I don't know if this is a question out of nowhere. I'm just thinking about this. I don't know if you can even answer it. It speaks to, it's not just the rice economy, it's an entire economy. It's agriculture, it's building. So now you have
everything. Yes, it's the skilled labor, it's the unskilled labor, it's the agriculture. I was having a conversation yesterday in another meeting where someone was saying, well, if you hadn't worked in the rice fields, you weren't Gullah Geechee. Well, of course, that's not true. Everyone didn't have their hand in the rice field, but this entire economy was built not just by the backs, the hands, the sweat, the energy, the skilled labor and the unskilled labor of those enslaved Africans. And so it was a total economy. If you think about the fact that the largest percentage of people living here were West African.
Yes.
From what you ate to the cash crops, to simply the building of the infrastructure, to the beautiful woodworking in the homes that folk love to walk through, to the maintenance of all of these things that we see, from the roads to the homes to the mills, etc. That was built on West African or African labor know-how, skill, and also the unskilled.
Skilled and unskilled labor, because the skill comes in the fact that you have to know that if that brick is not fully dry when you put it in the kiln, the steam will explode. So that takes skill. When you also talk about labor,
if I may interject.
Yes, please do. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Paul.
So, Paul, you were talking about the person who makes that
the most skilled person in a brickyard is the one who watches the smoke and feeds the fire. Mm-hmm. That person has to know when the smoke is the right color to let the fire die out so it can cool off so you can take the bricks. It's about 2,000 degrees 24/7 for 2 weeks. So the woodcutters are the ones who have to feed that.
That's amazing. So let me ask you this: as you're saying, do you know of anyone who is doing bricks in that fashion today, in some form or fashion?
No, I don't know of anyone here in the state.
Wait. Oh.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, I saw it on YouTube. There's a guy on YouTube who is doing it. It's small amounts. It's just one guy, but he's staying fairly close. I'm not sure. I don't remember how he cured the clay, but that's essential. I mean, there have been people here in Charleston trying to revive the Charleston brick industry, but they didn't cure the clay. So the bricks were sandy and soft. So there's a huge learning curve.
When I was in Sierra Leone at the beginning of the year, one thing I did notice is we were driving through some of the villages were fields of bricks that were drying. Obviously, handmade, hand-turned bricks that were drying in some of the more rural communities. So while as Paul says, there are sort of boutique brick makers here, and he's the guy. It was interesting to see that traditional type of brick, or at least that the method seemed to be. I mean, I didn't talk to anyone about how they were mixing that brick, forming that brick, but I did see homes that were made from them, and it was interesting to see them. You see a field full of bricks.
So the next time you go, that's another question you can ask Natalie, an aspect of the economy you can delve into. I know I'm giving you more work to do by saying that, but this is just so fascinating to me, and I get why Paul is a Brick Geek, because when you start delving into how it was made and the connection, and I was at the Harriet Tubman Bowley House in Georgetown this past Monday, because we celebrate the anniversary of the historic marker there. But they have some of those bricks there in the yard because those bricks are not original to the house. They were actually built someplace else. And when they built that house in the I want to say 90s. Might be a decade off. They took those bricks from someplace else and put those in that house. And so you can see the age. I don't know if y'all had a chance to go by there because they're in the yard. But it just brings to me the connection to now that we see these bricks all the time. We see this construction all the time and don't realize the history that's right in front of us. It's just fascinating to me. And I see Paul shaking his head. Paul, you have any thoughts towards that? It's just fascinating to me that here we are, we see a physical connection. It's almost you could put your fingers in this right now. And I think this one was at the Rice Museum. Paul, any thoughts regarding this connection? I'm sorry, say that again.
Complicated. It's not an easy
we lost you for a second, Paul. Go ahead.
When you're okay, it's not easy to comprehend because when you're looking at a building that was made before 1865, it was built at least in part by enslaved labor. So not just they, put the boards up and hammered them in, not just they put the brick down and slathered the mortar on. No, somebody had to do something before it got to that work site. Somebody had to cut the tree. Somebody had to put it through the lumber mill. Somebody had to haul it. Somebody had to finish it. The bricks are the same way. Somebody had to cut the trees. Somebody had to burn the bricks. Somebody had to harvest the clay, the sand, mix it. It took a lot of people.
It's labor intensive. Yeah. And we really don't realize, because when I hear things like, there were 350 enslaved Africans at a plantation, that's misleading to me, because was that 350 during that particular year? Was that 350 in 10 years? We know that people died. I mean, if they were just out in the rice fields, the disease they had to deal with, the snakes, the alligators, people died. Just in that context, this obviously, so it's more than misleading. Or hurricanes came by, depending on where the plantation was, and literally swept bodies out into the ocean, never to be seen again. So it's a little misleading to say this plantation had 350 slaves, because what is the context of that? But here we have something that you have living proof that it forces you to start questioning certain things. So let's bring this to the now. You have this project, Natalie and Paul. How did it come about, and what are your plans for the project? What do you see this accomplishing for us as people?
Every time I hear Paul talk about what went into it, from cutting the wood all the way through, I think, like today, the thought that came to me is that every brick is permeated with the essence and the story of West Africans. Every brick is saturated with that. Every historic house in these historic districts radiates our presence. And so what we intend to do, and this was initially just sort of a fun brainstorm. Paul is a good friend of mine and has been for several years. And neither of us can remember how in the world this happened, but we have squirrely minds. But I am an artist, and one of the materials I work with is gold leaf. As a matter of fact, Paul introduced me to gold leaf. He happened to have some from his former furniture refinishing business. And he gave me a little pile of 23 karat gold. And I was like, ooh. And I began to work that into my paintings, because what I wanted with my art was to show the value of those who I represent, that they are sacred, they are holy, that we are valuable. And gold was a way of doing that. And somehow during a conversation, we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we were to gold leaf these finger marks? And then we were like, ah! And I admit it honestly each time we talk about it, because it keeps me honest. My initial idea was a guerrilla project, which was, ooh, let's find some finger marks, let's go and gold leaf them in the night, low country Banksy and get out. That was my plan. But I was saner minds and heads prevailed. And so what we have done is we have started a nonprofit, the Ancestors Fingermarks Project, which was incorporated this summer. And with this project, what our intent is to have these finger marks identified by people listening might want to say, I think this is a finger mark. And once you begin to see them, it's hard to unsee them. Have them contact us, and they can do that through our Facebook or our email, and we will share that. And then we will get in touch with the stewards of those sites and get permission to put a gold leaf mark on this brick. Our ultimate goal is to have these geotagged so folk can find them. But it's a way of honoring the essence of the brick and acknowledging to our ancestors that we see them.
Boy, I think that's a beautiful thing. And every time I hear it, I'm just like you with Paul, because Paul showed me a brick that I think you guys did do the gold leaf in the finger mark. And just the thought, it's almost like our ancestors are speaking to us.
Yeah.
And just the thought for years that we've been walking past them, and now it's happening for a reason now. Maybe because you and Paul are creative folks and you are in tune with that voice, that you heard it and it moved you to this position. I don't know, but it certainly is, I think, profound during this time in our country that this is happening. And I don't know if I'm getting a little bit too deep out there with it, but just the fact that we could see and we can honor them, and it's just everywhere. Paul, what are your thoughts? Anything that you have in mind that you want to share with us regarding that?
Well, yeah, because I'm friends with the Daise family. And the Daise family are storytellers. So when I heard Simeon talking about his play and talking about communicating with the ancestors, this was just so simple to pick up their stories and the stories of the brick makers and share those heretofore unshared stories. I think it's profound.
It is, very much so. Natalie, anything you want to add to that?
Not really. I think it's funny because he talked about my children, and I learn from them all the time. My son is a playwright and a storyteller, an actor. My daughter is an Afrofuturist, a historian. And they talk about technologies for communication that have pre-existed much of what we consider technology, and that there are ways of accessing experiences that don't fall under sort of the Western concept, this is how we do it. And that if we are open to that, we're able to sort of bridge that gap. And so when Paul brought these bricks to my attention, which is a very tangible, I'll see it when I believe it kind of thing, a brick. I also began to feel that by interacting with that brick, we were sort of opening up a technology of communication that had been waiting for us to do so. You said, Marilyn, that Paul introduced you. You know, the first time I put my fingers in the fingers of an enslaved child on the Rice Museum, and I'm moved every time, because it's like, here I am, a free woman. It's 2020. I am a free woman. I have lived to this ripe old age as a free woman, but I see you. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you could have imagined me, but I am now imagining you. And so to me, that is magic. And, you know, I believed in magic all my life. And so as Paul sort of began to bring this to my attention and using his skills with identifying and verification of these bricks, it just gives an opportunity to cross the barrier over and over again.
I am very much into supporting handcrafted items and everything. And I hope that in this conversation that we have, that someone would take it upon themselves on a small scale, whether it's in Charleston or Georgetown, beyond YouTube, to go back to the West African way of making bricks and doing it somehow so that we can actually see that. I think that actually adds to this connection that we're talking about, this story, to really get into it and research it. So I just wanted to say that. And my next question is, well, before I get to the next question, I want to remind everybody that you are watching A Gathering Place, hosted by the Galagichi Chamber of Commerce. And we are happy to have our special guest with us today, Natalie Daise and Paul Garbarini, who is talking about the Ancestors Fingermark project. So I have two questions. And the first question, before I forget it, is why finger mark instead of fingerprint? Was there any particular reason?
You want to address that, Paul? Yes, it's different. And we're with only one exception, the 1893 bricks, there you don't see fingerprints. 1893 bricks are so clear you can see fingerprints. The rest of them are impressions.
I got you. And this is the 1893. And you can actually see the veins.
I was watching a Canadian detective show, and that's what they called fingerprints in the early 1900s.
All right. Very good. I had no idea. See, I'm learning a lot today. So where do you go from here with the project? You talked about the geotagging in the future. So that's not quite the question I wanted to ask, because you kind of answered it already, Natalie. We lost Paul, but I know he'll pop back in.
Right.
What can we do to support this project? How can we get involved?
A few things you can do. If you see what appears to be finger marks, you can contact us through our Facebook page, or we have an email, which is Ancestor Fingermarks Project at Gmail, Ancestors Fingermarks Project at gmail.com, and get in touch with us. And right now we're working generally in the Charleston, Georgetown area, because that's where we're located. Hopefully, eventually we would like to just expand this, but right now we're working close to home. It's COVID, y'all, and we need to stay close to home. So notify us if you think you know of one, and let us know, and our brick verification scholar, Paul, and we are slowly building our team out, can be there to verify that. Another thing you can do if you want to support the project is you can donate. Gold leaf costs money, and the time it effort that it takes costs time. And also, people would like us to come and to talk about this, and we'd love to be able to educate folk about it. But to do that also is a matter of time and money. So you can certainly support us financially. And at this point, if you wish to do so, you can do it through, you can reach out to us once again through Facebook and our Gmail, and we can guide the rest of that process. So that's some of the things that you can do. Paul?
Yes.
So you can do that. One thing. one thing we can tell you is that we did mark our first bricks at the Avery Research.
At Avery Research? Okay.
In Charleston. And Paul made that connect with Darren. And in this case, the finger marks were on the inside of the building.
Okay.
Which was good because it's a process. The marking is another process. Nothing like the process of making brick. Not labor intensive in that way, but it is time intensive.
All right. So let me ask you this. So if you put gold leaf on these finger marks, what's to prevent someone from coming along and scraping that gold off?
First, it
wouldn't be worth it.
Wouldn't be worth it.
I don't think that you want to irritate ancestors in that way.
No.
Okay.
And we initially we were going to put it right in that finger mark, but we decided we don't want to alter it anyway. So now what we're doing is we're putting a mark next to the finger mark, and it's really just a small circle, slightly smaller than an inch in diameter.
Okay, but you can see it. You can recognize it.
There's not enough gold, so we're using 22 to 24 karat gold leaf, which is very fine and very thin and well adhered. And really, if someone took the time to scrape it off, it would not be worth anything.
Very. Right. So y'all know now it's not worth it. So don't mess up. Don't get the ancestors angry at you because it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And you know what they say? How the folk put mouth on you?
Yes.
You don't want the ancestors putting mouth on you. You just don't want it.
No, you don't. You don't. That's for real, folks. Don't be playing with that. So,
but it's not enough gold. It's not enough gold for that. We use very paper thin sheets of gold, and just a very small amount of that gold. And while it does cost money to buy it, it is gold. It's so thin that if by the time you scraped it off, you would have nothing but scrapings on the edge of whatever you scraped it with.
Yeah,
that's what we're gonna.
But this is well worth donating to. We also because gold is expensive. So if you want to help this project and it's worthwhile, how about the geotagging? Has anyone offered to help you with the geotagging? I want to put that out there in the atmosphere, folks, that's another opportunity for someone to help this very worthwhile project. Especially college students. Thank you.
Yes,
especially college students.
Yeah, we are ageless in our hearts, but
yes.
We need some help, folks. Let's be real. That's why they're here. We need some help.
So actual on the ground help with things like that is welcome, or folk who want to donate so that we can pay those people who can do that work for us. That would also be helpful.
There you go.
All right. Very good. Very good. So I want to show it's not just the bricks in the walls, but I think one of the pictures you sent me, if I'm correct, this is a walkway. Is this a walkway? Can you tell?
That is the entry to the old district jail in Charleston.
Okay.
I walked over those bricks for over 20 years before I saw them. And
realized what we were walking on, or folks were walking on for all these years. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just, and in the walls, folks need to look down sometimes too, because they're all over the place. It's Charleston, Georgetown, they're all over the place. I mean, now it's like I'm looking for finger marks. So all right. So where else can we look?
Just about anywhere. You can always tell people who've been on my tour, historic Charleston tour, because they're standing in front of a brick wall like they're off their meds. Just standing there staring at a brick wall.
Natalie has a story to tell because she's laughing. Go ahead, Natalie.
I've had people who have taken Paul's tour at McLeod or in Charleston, who then come and take my tour. I sometimes do tours and things at the Rice Museum in Georgetown, and they're saying, I have to tell you something. I don't know if you know this, but there are finger marks and bricks. And I go, met Paul, have you? And sometimes
so now everybody's looking for.
Tell them, honey, that's not a finger mark. That's just a chip. I hate to tell them.
Everything. So, Paul, have you thought about teaching a class? a class
Well,
on
we do
really how to
presentations
look
like
for
this.
those.
No, when they're geolocated, geotagged, that'll be how to find them.
Okay.
In the meantime, you can look at pictures on our Facebook page and see if you've got anything that look like that.
All
or
right.
call us,
Very good.
and we'll help you out.
Very good.
Also, you can indeed send us pictures to our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Everything that comes to our Facebook page, you know, somebody will see and approve, and we'll let you know, like, yeah, that's one right there, or not.
Okay. Very good. So you heard that, folks.
You can email
you can email or go to their Facebook page and send them pictures of what you may think are finger marks, and they'll be happy to take a look at them and verify that for you. So, folks, this is a wonderful opportunity not only to support them through donations, but be a part of this wonderful project and help us continue that connection with the ancestors and to market so future generations, well, Maryland can go out and find. And then it's an opportunity to do geotagging to actually market. So geotagging, I'm assuming, because I haven't done that in a while. I downloaded something at one point with the state parks where you could go out and find stuff. So I'm assuming there will be an app so people can go and find with it. So college students, this is an opportunity. This is a wonderful opportunity to do something innovative, yet it brings our history to life and allows folks to have that communication with the history. So this is a wonderful project. I encourage everyone to please reach out, go to their Facebook page. I know a website is in process for the future, coming soon. So stay in touch with that. And I'm going to throw up one last picture because this is Paul and Natalie at the Rice Museum. Yeah, I was late to the event that day, but they did present at the Rice Museum. Paul, before I wrap this up, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. I want to remind everybody that you are watching a gathering place, and today's topic is Ancestors Fingermark Project, and we have two delightful guests with us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Drop your questions into the comment section, and we'll try to get them. We actually have more comments today, but that's fine because people are really excited about this. So, Paul, what do you want us to know? Any last thoughts as we move forward?
Yes. First of all, if you're going to send photographs, be sure you put a tape measure or a ruler near the brick in the picture. That helps us determine origins of that particular brick. I've been heartened by the enthusiasm, by the emotion of people seeing these bricks. And I think Natalie puts it so well that this brick is the essence of more than one person. It took a whole bunch of people making that brick, touching all of that brick, but it was the children who left us the impressions, who encourage us to continue their story.
Very true, very much so. Thank you, Paul, for that. And it gave me a thought too when we were talking about all the different skills and tasks on the plantations, and people just think we're in the field. Now we know more about the brick making, and it makes you think about the actual building of buildings. We know it, but to now have that connection to see it right in front of our eyes. But one thing I wanted people also to realize that there were the enslaved who traveled with plantation owners. A mutual friend of ours, Zenobia Harper, we were talking one day, and she said how they made the money in Georgetown but spent it in Charleston. And people don't realize they traveled with an entourage. You know, it wasn't the owner didn't just go to Charleston by himself or herself. It was an entire entourage, mostly of enslaved people who were moving them back and forth. So those are also jobs, also the driver of the carriages, the people with the baggages, the lady maids, and all that type of jobs. The cooks, you know, it wasn't just
Right.
Yes, yes. It was an entire economy built from this free labor.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts to get us thinking. And I hope people are starting to thinking of the vastness of this and start doing their own research and delving into it deeper. And it's a wonderful place to start are the finger marks. That's a wonderful place to start. So Natalie, any thoughts that you have that you want
I
to
don't think
share
I
with
have any
us?
additional thoughts. I think, as you were talking, my daughter uses the phrase "the lived lives." That history, we have a tendency to pick out people who we think are, special to talk about, but our history was made up of the lived lives of every person on every level who participated in the economy, in the existence of this place. And so as we begin to think about that, we also can give value of our own lived lives here and now, how we are continuing to contribute to the story. And I hope people will take that away. And also I want to say that the Ancestors Fingermarks Project has joined the Gullah Geechee Chamber.
Yes,
And
thank you very
really
much.
appreciate the work that you're doing. We appreciate you giving us the platform to talk about the things we love. And Paul and I, we got our hands in lots of different stuff. But this project is really near and dear. And so we thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. And you and Paul are always welcome to come back to talk about the lots of different stuff that you're doing. We're here Wednesdays and Sundays at 4, and the chamber, we're getting ready to really put some other stuff into play also. So there will be more opportunities because that's why we're here, to help you do what you do best in that. And we're a resource. So thank you very much, Natalie. Natalie, and going back to what you were saying, do you ever, and Paul, you can answer this also, think about what you're doing now, your lived life, and how it will be perceived generations from now? Because someone's going to see what you're doing now.
I am in a unique position in that I have been doing culturally relevant work for more than 35 years. And so I'm in the unique position of starting to get some feedback. And yet I still can't get a clear picture, But even if no one knows my name 2 or 3 generations from now, from what I have learned about what our ancestors have left for us, I have no doubt that the work that I'm doing will matter. Even if it doesn't matter, someone says that was Natalie Daise, somehow my own spirit has impacted the experience of those to come, as has Paul's. So I have no doubt that will happen, and it becomes clearer and clearer with the passage of time. The advantages of being old, but also, I'm learning from younger people who are recognizing that they, by existing, are making a difference. Just by existing, just by breathing, by turning a brick, by feeding horse, by growing something in the yard, by lighting a candle, by telling a story. They are leaving an imprint that will impact those who come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Paul, do you have any thoughts regarding that? Because that was beautifully said, Natalie. Thank you. Paul, any thoughts?
Natalie says things beautifully.
Yes, she does.
That was one of the reasons we became friends. I was pretty impressed with how she said things. I have learned that I can, from now, begin to be a better ancestor myself. I have done things that are relatively permanent on Earth. Whether my name is ever attached to it again or not, it's there. But when you think about how simple, well, it's all relative, the lives of the enslaved were. Simple, uncomplicated in a way. I don't mean that they were easy. But like Natalie said, it's still profound because we can still see it. We can pick up the story from hundreds of years ago.
And those marks are still changing the world.
Yes.
Even today.
And just think, a little child doing the labor that they were assigned to do left a mark that's changing the world. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. I actually think that's a beautiful place to stop. I don't know what else can be said. This actually has been a very moving show for me. So I need to sign off and probably shed a tear or two. But but I want to thank you, Paul, and thank you, Natalie, for joining me and sharing with us the Ancestors Fingermark Project. I encourage those to please visit their Facebook page to learn more and share your pictures as you discover the marks left by the ancestors all around us, And that's a beautiful thing, and help our ancestors continue to change the world. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Natalie. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I've enjoyed this. I really have. But I'm going to go now, and I got to go shed a tear.
Okay. Goodbye. Thank you, Marilyn. Bye,
All
Paul.
right. Have a good one. We'll see you later.
Okay.